Yeah, we had a client once that said, we're doing these monthly security awareness trainings. Can we just do those like every 6 months? And I'm like, seriously? Let's talk this through.
Yeah.
And then you tell me if you think this is a good business decision.
Critical thinking is important.
It didn't take long. They were like, yeah, that's probably a bad idea. Never mind. Just leave it.
Yeah. Glad we worked through this. Nice talk.
Yeah.
Help me with hip hop. Let's get it right. Protect your patience. Day and night. Donna and David, the experts on your side. Help me with hip hop. Let's get it right.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the 10 security and privacy metrics to keep your business in the black.
There you go.
Yeah. Fitting, since today is the day we do our corporate taxes, that you would be talking about staying in the black.
Well, I don't know why it came to me. I don't know. Maybe I was thinking about, all the financials. You know how that goes.
Yeah. And as we are recording, it is St. Patty's Day. So I have no St. Patty's Day jokes. If I did, I would tell you. So unfortunately, don't have it.
I figured you'd have a limerick for us.
I know. I should. Just it snuck up on me. I wasn't ready at all.
Yeah, well, we're not gonna do any limericks because that'll those are generally what are done in a bar, and they go off the rails pretty quickly.
Yeah,
and I've heard plenty of them not too long ago. So we were asking Chat GPT for them, and it finally said, "No, we can't. We can't go that far." We were like, "No, no, we can't go that far."
Yeah. I've had Chat GPT tell me no a few times too. I'm like, why not?
Can't be as bad as you want to be.
It wasn't even that. It was like I couldn't even understand. Like it just refused to do it. And I'm like, but I'm not violating anything. Why won't you do this? Fine, I'll change to another tool. I don't know about you. I usually have like 4 different AI tools open, and I'll post the same thing in all of them to see what I get.
It just depends. And I've got so much built in custom GPTs so that I don't have to do a lot. I can it already knows what I want. I just open that one and, plug things in. So that's anyway.
Yeah,
in our company, thanks to Elizabeth, Chat GPT has a name. It's called Chad. She just started calling it that for whatever reason. So now we have conversations with Chad.
Yeah.
Chad is our newest employee. Huh?
Chet. We call him Chet.
Chad and Chat, twins.
Yep.
All right. So
well, let's go through this. But this is going to be something that we're going to be talking about, except at a much deeper level at the PriceTech Bootcamp.
Yep.
Because we're going to be talking about it in ways, first of all, what you should be focused on, how to implement those things, and how to look at risk management differently than you are now. It's not a compliance conversation at all, because security and compliance are not the same.
No, it's risk management, which includes security and compliance.
Right.
Very different approach. So, so check out, because we're running up on the end of early bird, and everybody's going to want to get that early bird because it goes up a good bit, I believe, for April 13th, I think. So, that being said, go to PriceTechBootcamp.com. Privacy and Security Bootcamp, May 13th through the 16th in Stone Mountain, which is also part of the Metro Atlanta area. So y'all come on now, you hear?
Yep.
Check us out.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, see you soon on that. Now, let's talk about being a company owner, how you're supposed to pay attention to things. monitor metrics, look at reports, know what's in the checking account, or know how to quickly get it and see all of those things. And you should do all of those things that you're doing today on, whether it's an inventory or, marketing or flow of new clients or patients. All of that's part of managing the business. And you need to do this the same way, which is to have reports that show that you're staying on top of it. You don't have to understand it. You just have to understand what looks wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
And so I've got a list here, and I've gotten Krista's input and David's input, and we've kind of tweaked a little bit. And I'm sure by the time we get to the boot camp, it'll be tweaked a little more.
Mm-hmm.
But it's broken down. There's 10 items. And the first 3, I kind of feel like if you're going to protect yourself and all you're going to worry about is that, you should do those first 3. Those are, and to make sure that it's really happening well, you can add the next 2, and then you do all of them to really make sure that you've got control over everything. But if nothing else, start with the first 3.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to be talking about these things, and you have some options. Like, you can do it yourself. Not that I recommend it, but you can do it yourself. You can have somebody else do it, but you need to understand what that even is. Mm-hmm. And that's what I hope that we can get across today. Because the first one we'll talk about is patch and vulnerability management, with an emphasis on the word management.
Yes. So
the difference between management and not management is, if you're doing patch and vulnerability management, you have something you're looking at that says, okay, today our vulnerabilities and our unpatched software is this, and now we're going to address these things. Now tomorrow, what is that going to look like? Because there are going to be more things that need to be patched and vulnerabilities. And then what does that look like? And it's a continual process. So when people tell me, for example, we do vulnerability scans once a year, I'm like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Really, what's the point?
Yeah. You've already been, it's no. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you're not on top of it.
It changes almost every single day. And so it's as bad as you telling me that you're doing training once a year.
For everything.
Yeah. So you're patching and vulnerability management, Donna. Why should people even care about that?
Well, we always talk about, this is like your number one thing, is that however they can get to you, they're going to use a vulnerability in your software, in your configuration somewhere, to take advantage of that opportunity. So whether it's finding an unpatched old device or some software that you're using that you've got machines that don't have patches on it, like we went through all the folks that had the remote desktop client that needed a patch for a long time. I think we've finally gotten most of those patches out, but I'm sure you could probably find some. And the minute they get in, they're looking for any machine that's got a vulnerability that they can exploit to then get deeper into your network. So those things are often exposed in ways that you aren't aware of. And that's why we have to make sure that we've addressed the updates and the vulnerabilities that are identified. And you can have an update and you can have a vulnerability. They're not the same necessarily. You can have a vulnerability there's no update for.
Yeah, you can.
So you've got to evaluate all of these things and address them. And the big thing, though, is the patches. We've identified it. They know how to fix it, and they fixed it. Or there's some big thing blowing up right now. Everybody's scrambling to adjust for it. You're going to know exactly where it is if you're evaluating these things. So that's why.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for me if I'm a criminal. It's a lot easier for me to find something that is unpatched than it is to try to brute force my way in.
Right.
Think of it like I'm walking around your building and I'm pushing on all the doors and the windows. And that you last week identified that one of the windows just doesn't lock very securely. Like there's a vulnerability in the locking mechanism. But if I push hard enough, doesn't take a whole lot, but if I push hard enough, it opens the window. That's how I get in. And that's the same thing with these vulnerabilities. If you don't fix them, people can get in. And so you got to have, first of all, you got to have a way to identify what needs to be patched and what's vulnerable. So, some of the things you can do is make sure that you're turning on your patching within your operating system. So Windows, Linux, Mac, whatever you're using, make sure those are turned on. Now, if you've got an MSP or an IT provider, they're probably doing all this stuff for you. Like for us, when we come in, we turn off all the automatic patching for Windows because we want to control that through our software. So we turn that off. But there are also other applications that there are third-party applications that are needing to be patched. And some of those are in the visibility of the IT provider. Some of them maybe are not. You've got firmware that are in other network devices. And this is a reason too why if you have an outsourced IT provider, MSP, they often want to put you on the same network devices that they support everywhere. Because if I supported every single type of network device, it would be massively difficult for me to keep up with all the vulnerabilities and patches that need to be put out there, not to mention how they all work differently. So if you hire my firm, I'm going to come in and if you don't have the type of hardware we support, I'm going to strip it out, put in new hardware, because that's the only way that I can ensure that we're supporting it in a way that keeps you secure and safe.
So patching is super important, as you can tell. And that's why you need to have a report. And it's something as simple as we have X number of systems and they, this many have missing updates, this many have vulnerabilities, and you should be able to see that on a regular basis. And, if you're lucky, you might get one day where you have none. Or the report is run at that 1 second where there's none. But you will almost always see it. And if you're not seeing that, I'm, tracking 4 machines we're converting over to what we're doing for patch management. I've been tracking 4 machines and it's taken me, I bet if I go back out there right now, there's something that's cropped up because it just, all of them have something different on them. So you've got your operating system, your other things. So you should have something that's scanning those and telling you those things, and you should be able to get a report. And you don't need the details unless it's for some reason you want them. You get to choose, but you should have that metric, that piece of information that we have X number of systems, this many of them are patched and up to date, this many have some vulnerabilities that need to be addressed, and this many have updates that need to be done. That's it. You don't need, but you should see that. And if those numbers are way out of line, if 50% of your devices need updates or vulnerabilities corrected, you've got a serious problem.
Yeah.
But that's what you're looking for. You want to see that it's happening. You want somebody to show you that it's happening. And if they're not getting updated, that means somebody's not paying attention to the alerts because they're going somewhere.
Yeah.
So you don't have to understand them.
No, and you can have them based on criticality. And there's sometimes when you might run into a vulnerability or a patch where you may identify, well, we can't patch this particular software for whatever reason. But if that's the case, you need to document why. Or what is your compensating control that you're putting in place?
Yep. I just did one of those remediation documented controls today to explain, what you're telling me here, this, but you would want to ask those questions, and those numbers should not be the same, and they should never be consistently perfect because that tells you something's not happening. All right. So then the next thing that's important, so we talk about patching, vulnerability management. That's number one. If everybody just did that, we'd be better off. And then authentication and access management.
Oh yeah, your MFA stuff. That's every single alert we've seen come out for a long time, every single one of them says, make sure you have MFA turned on. Make sure you have MFA adopted. Make sure you have MFA. And yet here we are still having conversations about people not using MFA. And there's no cost to it. It's like, your Gmail, Microsoft 365, all of them have that functionality. You just turn it on. You go get you an authenticator app, whatever flavor you want to use, and set it up.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different ways. So what you want to look at, because stolen credentials is a massive problem. And whatever's going on right now, we're having more reports. We have clients who've never had these business email compromises and are now having them. And they're stealing the MFA tokens. They're doing all these things. So we're working double time. Even with the MFA, it's still a potential problem, but it has blocked a lot of them. So what you want to know is, do you have your employees using MFA on email? That should be happening, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. And then your line of business apps, the important applications. Who has MFA turned on? And that number should always be consistent, or you should be asking, do we need to turn it on elsewhere? Why aren't we enforcing it with other people? So that you know how much of that is going on, and that password policies that you've set in your policies and procedures are being followed. And they should be able to give you that documentation saying, here's the active password policy, that we have in place. And, only look at your top most important apps, if nothing else. If you look at your email collaboration and your line of business and your accounting, you've gotten most of it right there. So the next thing, though, this one's important to do right now.
Yeah.
And that is understanding all your devices. So you need to know that they're patched, but you also need to know that they can continue to be patched.
Right.
So you want to know how many devices you have and and what operating system are they using. And you want an alert for any that are within a certain amount of time of end of life, which is what you would see if you have Windows 10 right now. So if you got a bunch of Windows 10 machines, they should be kicking out on a report saying, we've got X number of computers and these ones over here are end of life. Same thing with mobile devices. If you can no longer get security updates, then you have to now protect them differently, and you want to keep important things off of them.
Yep. So, yeah, and end of life, it's a little easier with things like Windows devices. A lot of people forget the fact that you've got network devices that also have end of life. And I can't tell you how many times I've been going in somewhere and somebody's like, we've been running fine, everything's great. And then I'd see that they've got a 10 to 15-year-old router sitting there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. When's the last time this was patched? And they're like, patched?
What? Yeah, so you want to know about all the devices. Not just the computers. You want to know about your mobile devices that you're managing as well as your network devices. You want to be sure that those are being managed properly. And even though, like David says, he comes in and puts all those in, and, I'm going to count on him to do that, everybody needs somebody. Everybody needs somebody, David. But is that Kermit? Anyway, double checking is never wrong on this
trust
stuff.
But verify.
Yes.
Trust but verify.
And that's what you have to do on these. And the other thing is to make sure all of your devices that are running some kind of security software. Anti-malware. We used to call it antivirus. It's not that anymore. But, they'll call it EDR, XDR. What all do you hear?
MXDR.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ones. Unfortunately, it's gotten harder and harder to understand what it is because there's now different levels of malware protection. It's not the same anymore. Is it managed? Is it outsourced to a SOC? Is it not? There's all these different levels to it. If you're going to do it yourself, then you're on your own. Honestly, this day and time, not even though I'm selling this service, put that hat aside for a minute. This day and time, I don't think I would do my own, period. Not in a business environment. At home, sure. In a business environment, I would not. That's like somebody saying, you're going to do your own health care, or are you going to do your own legal? I don't even file my own taxes.
I know, right? I don't trust myself to figure all that out. I'm too busy doing this.
Yeah. So I just wouldn't do it. But
so you want to be aware when things are coming to end of life. You want to be aware if they're not protected. They're out there naked in harsh climate environment. They're in Siberia.
Yeah.
Getting
the thing about it is if you've got any kind of network edge device, meaning, it's public facing to the internet, I can figure out what that device is. And if I hit your network and I see the device listed, all I got to do is go and compare that to any kind of vulnerabilities that are out there or whether or not it's end of life. And then I know what I can target against it.
Mm-hmm. So you want to know that. You could also, put a patching status on them if you wanted to, or you're getting, like the ones that are getting close to end of life, you want to monitor those, or some that are, a patch management report probably not going to include your firewalls and your access points. And you might want to put it on there, but you're going to need to know your environment to get this information. But I've seen before, like in a transition between two different kinds of anti-malware, there were like 30 machines that got missed. And nobody was comparing what we started with on the old one to where we were now. Because when you're doing hundreds of them, you may not notice that unless somebody checked that box. And, thankfully they were still running the old one, but they weren't being tracked in the reporting on the new one. So these things are an important part of making sure things are up and running. And again, you don't have to fix it. You just want to see numbers and documentation to show that things are where they're supposed to be. If something looks weird, somebody better explain it to you.
And as you've discovered recently, not all these things are equal.
No.
You got this new service that you ran on your network, and you're like, it found all kind of stuff that none of the other tools found.
Right. Yeah. And it's things that, not necessarily major things, but they were all things that needed to be cleaned up. And, and it's taken time it required a lot of cleanup work. But it was from apps that left things where they shouldn't be, and just stuff that's dangling out there where things have come and gone and updates applied. It just happens. But it was really interesting to see how many was there. It did get my attention post-haste. As soon as I ran in, I'm like, what the? I said things. Yeah. I said things, David. Okay, number 4, security awareness and phishing resilience.
Yeah.
So if we, as we mentioned, the BEC compromise, that's people. It's people.
Yep.
And I can assure you, these people feel awful when they are the victims. And I feel so bad for them now because these things are good. And they're spoofing things, and it's really hard. So we do plenty on our own trying to prevent it here. We don't want any of this coming through. We don't even want to see it. And if we do see it, quick, report spam. don't look at it. Just quick report spam. But you've got to have that training. If the people don't truly understand how serious it is and how bad it is and how good they're getting, they're not going to care. And that goes back to the annual training. Yes, you have required annual training, but that's not enough.
No, not at all. The other thing about training too is, are you able to measure the security awareness training? Like for us, when I train my staff, we have We have the emails that go out. We do it weekly, which that might be more than you want to do. So, some people do it monthly, but we do it weekly. And then there's a quiz at the end of every single one of them, and you have to pass with the 80% or better, or you got to go back through it again.
Yeah.
And so I'm not just measuring the phishing simulation. I'm also measuring the training every single week.
Well, and that's one of the things I learned at the All Hands in San Diego, where they had done some, like academic studies where it's controlled environment and all that kind of stuff. And they had great results on very generic phishing, but when they targeted it and made it seem like it was something that really should go to you, they had very different results.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're just doing the generic and you're getting great results, it's time to step it up a notch. If you're doing the generic and getting bad results, it's time to do something. Because it's
trouble.
bad.
It's like I got a text message today, Donna, from a number I didn't recognize from Washington, D.C. And it said, David. It said, "Hey, David, is this still your number?" And I'm like, no. Because all of our cell phone numbers have been out there now in breach after breach after breach. Mm-hmm. No. Yeah. Like anybody with any common sense knows if you're going to message me and you probably don't know my number, you wouldn't be asking that question. You're going to tell me who you are.
Right.
Right. Oh, this is Donna. Just making sure this is still your number, whatever.
Yeah.
But no.
But I could see you. I could send you a text and say something. You'd send back, "Who dis? New phone?"
Yeah.
Who dis? New phone?
I don't know who you are.
I don't know who you are.
Yeah, but I saw that this morning. I was like, no, we're not playing that game today.
No, they're after you on text message. They're after you on email. They're after you on social media. And it's constant, and you have to understand that. And the only way that you keep people aware of that is to continue to train them all the time. So you have to have some reports showing that that's happening. I want to know that there's security tips going out, that we had a webinar. We sent out a newsletter, and how many people opened it and looked at it. We, do a reminder. I want to know that is happening and happening on a regular basis. And I want to know that I'm getting the required ones for my compliance. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a client once that said, we're doing these monthly security awareness trainings. Can we just do those like every 6 months? And I'm like, seriously? Let's talk this through.
Yeah.
And then you tell me if you think this is a good business decision.
Critical thinking is important.
It didn't take long. They were like, yeah, that's probably a bad idea. Never mind. Just leave it.
Yeah. Glad we worked through this. Nice talk.
Yeah.
All right. So then next, though, now we're getting into the ones. So the first three, actually the first four, I guess, would be these are the ones where you're really preventing attacks. The first four we talked about there. Okay. And if you do nothing else, do those. If you do nothing else, do the first three, but you really should do the fourth one, because that's the ones that are really saying we are trying to prevent things from happening in every way, all the important ways. Now we get to actually monitoring it and staying on top of our risk management. Now you're at the next level. Okay. So now you can add these reports, which is, what are the security and privacy incidents that are being reported? And make sure you're looking into snooping. Our friends over at Sphere, there's tools that review these access logs and let you know. And once you turn those on, it's amazing to learn how much is really going on in your office you didn't know about.
Yeah. I love the guys that are like, well, we've never had a security or privacy incident. Okay. And I'm like, oh, that's concerning.
When I ask, security violation, how have you sanctioned people for violations of security? Never happened. Right away. Somebody's violated security policy. It's impossible. Yeah. It's just impossible to say that never happened. So anyhow, you want to see how many incidents were occurring and what types. And, it could be, there's a single patient involved, and, it was, we decided that this was incidental, and it was just somebody accidentally opened up the wrong Sue Smith. And so that's fine. But these over here, we had to go and look into further. And so you want to know if there's a rampant problem. You want to know if there's a frequent customer in that list, so that you can keep up with what's going on. But again, these are just numbers. And you're counting on the people to give you the numbers. And if the numbers don't look right, you're counting on them to answer why. So the next one I put in here because we're small, no one attacks us. I think this is a very, very valuable stat.
Yeah.
And really what you're wanting to know is to pull your security for your email security, your endpoint protections, your firewalls. And, David could pull this and show you how much is being blocked. And it should be a lot.
Yeah.
So
it is. Yeah. It's a tremendous amount.
Yeah. So how much is being blocked of all those things? Are we blocking spam? Are we blocking, phishing? Are we blocking scans and attacks on our network? And, that you should see pretty straightforward to get you a report. How many and what types, from a big overview. I'm not talking little bitty details. Technical people will want to give you every detail. That's me and you, and we do want to do that. So I want just a metric showing me how much email are we blocking, how many spam emails and phishing emails are being reported, how many attacks are on our firewall. Tell me all of that. But these are, again, not hard numbers to get. I just want the totals. And I want to see, and you will then learn just how much David is actually doing when everything's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I always love the conversations like, I don't think we need all this security because nothing's happening. I'm like, that's why nothing's happened.
That's like, well, I don't think we need all this security. Our diamonds haven't been stolen. Nobody's stealing them. Let's take down those bars and stuff. Tell the bank that.
Yeah, I know.
And then the next thing is we talk all the time about supply chain. You really should be asking if your team is monitoring your vendors and if they're aware of problems with your vendors and it's being tracked and followed on a regular basis. And you should have a policy and procedure about this. And you want to know that the BAAs that are in place, if they are coming up for renewal, do you need to renegotiate what's in them? I mean, these are things that, again, you could have at a high level. We've got 12 vendors that we reviewed, and we sent all of them their assessments, and next month we'll tell you how they did on the assessments. There you go. But I want those stats, and I want to keep up with them. And then if I have a problem vendor, I want to know about that every month or every day in some cases. Okay, so that's all of that. Now, we're going to look at compliance and being prepared for the worst. And these are the hard ones. So the first piece of this is what, I don't know, I find it, if you've ever had a big incident, you understand that you don't have an incident response plan.
Right.
But if you have an incident response plan, you understand that every time you have an incident, you're going to need to add more to it or change something. And so you just got two people. I don't have one and I don't know it. Or I think I have one and I don't know I don't, is usually what it is. And we have one and, I hope we got everything in it from the last time, this kind of thing.
It's in my head. It's all in my head.
Everybody knows what to do.
I hire smart people. That's what somebody told me one time. I'm like, wait a minute. Are you telling me your incident response plan is that you hired smart people?
Yeah, that's it.
I was like, have you ever seen smart people when the place is burning down?
care
I
of.
don't think any of that matters at that point.
Yeah, none of it. But here's the things you want to know. You want to know that you have a plan, right? And you want to know what playbooks you have and how much is in your plan. Is like, does it meet the recommendations for a plan? Because if not, what you want to start monitoring is, how are we doing on getting the plans up to date?
Right.
You know, do I know exactly what we need to do if we get hit by a business email compromise? Do I know what to do if we get hit by ransomware? You know, those kind of things. And are the people that should be involved actually understanding that they're going to be involved?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, this is when you get to the part of like, what does it take to recover? Like, we're talking disaster recovery. And I think we talk about this in the boot camp every single year. I harp on it because so many people, when you start talking about disaster recovery, incident response, business continuity, I don't think a lot of people have a good grasp on what that really is. Because when I start having conversations with people, they're like, oh, no, we've got backups. And I'm like, well, backups of what? And you start looking at it and like, okay, but this is not going to help you continue business if something happens.
Right.
Like, you don't have any of your systems backed up. You don't have your email platforms backed up. You don't have your MFA codes backed up. It's like you don't have any of this stuff done. It's like you're backing up QuickBooks, you know, or something. It's like, it's so far off. Now, what is it going to actually take to get you back in business? If the place burnt to the ground, can you start back up tomorrow?
I always love the people that say, I've got backup and it's even in the cloud. And I'm like, if all of your equipment is gone because it burned to the ground, what are you going to do?
Yeah. And this is where people don't often realize the question isn't, do you have a backup? There's two questions after that. It's number one, can you recover from the backup? Because just because you have it backed up doesn't mean you can recover from it. And the other thing is, how long is that going to take?
Yep.
You know, there was several years ago, I was at an accounting firm and the guy was like, I got backups. I've been using Carbonite, paid for it for a year, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, do you mind if I look at it? And so I did. Two things we realized. First of all, we realized that the backup never ran anymore after the first time you set it up. He didn't know that because he never looked again. The other thing that we found out is that because of the plan he was on, it was going to take him 33 days to get his systems back up and going, because that's how long it would have taken to get the data downloaded back to his machines.
That's
or,
good.
you know, you could pay to have it shipped to you, but it's still going to take 3 to 4 business days to get that. And he's like, I can be back up and running in 30 minutes. And I'm like, no, not on your best day will that happen.
And that's, you know, that's where, you know, I love the line that you always use. You don't buy backup, you buy restore.
Yeah. Yep. You are paying for the ability to recover your systems or your data.
Right.
What does that look like? What do you want? And I love the people that are like, we can't afford any downtime. Everything has to be able to be recoverable immediately. And I'm like, we can do that. Here's how many commas that have. And then they go, wait a minute, what?
There's a price for that. Yeah.
Yes, we can do it. It is extremely expensive. But if that's what you need, but in the same token, it drives me crazy that people are like, you know, this particular person has a job function is so critical, they can't have any downtime on that computer. And I'll say, well, do you have a secondary device for them in case something happens to their primary device? You have another computer sitting around in a box they can use. No. What do you mean no? It's that critical and you won't spend $1,000 on another computer to sit in the box in case they need it? And it's that critical? You might want to think about that.
Yeah. So you want this kind of information. You want to know that somebody's thinking about these things. You want to know what is your expected recovery time. If you add things or change things, you're going to want to know how much does that impact your recovery. So you also want to know that you're doing tabletop exercises and testing your recovery, testing the ability to restore things. So you want to know
which happens
those.
very infrequently.
Yeah, I know. There's some folks that have, backup where it's automatically going to test or restore every so often and give you there's some really good stuff, but you've got to pay for it. And so this is huge because this means I'm going to do all those things I can to protect myself, but the chance of something happening doesn't go away. And if you don't have this stuff, it's going to, you may be down to the point you're no longer in the black.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you want to monitor for is how prepared are you to get back up and running? And it's not as easy as everybody thinks. It's not. Whatever you think it is, if you've never been through having to recover from a major problem, you have no idea how hard it will be and how long it will take. Talk to somebody who's dealt with it. So you want to have some regular reports knowing that your incident response team is meeting. You want to know that somebody's monitoring your backup is actually happening and that, it gets tested periodically and that somebody's sitting around. You got your incident response team, and really, if you're the owner, you should be on the incident response team or at least rotate in periodically, that it's being reviewed. What will happen when X happens? And we do a tabletop exercise in the boot camp. So again, this is stuff that I already needed to do some stuff for the boot camp. We're throwing it in the podcast. So then we got to run it. Two more. All right. Audit and risk assessment status.
Mm-hmm.
So this is your risk management part. This is part compliance and part protection, right? You could protect things without actually figuring out what you needed to protect, I guess.
Yeah.
And just assume.
Well, it also makes you defensible. So, I try to get my clients to understand we're defending you at a digital level so that we can defend you at a legal level.
Mm-hmm. Because if people want to know, are you doing what was reasonable and appropriate?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't show you were doing what was reasonable and appropriate, then you are in serious trouble when it comes to these legal lawsuits when something happens. So you want to make sure your security risk assessment is being, updated and monitored. And if you've got big changes coming in your environment, you're supposed to do like a mini assessment. I don't remember what it calls it now, but anyway, you need to make sure those are happening. That somebody's sitting down, okay, we're going to get a new server. Has somebody sat down and drawn up a list, what could go wrong and what is our plan to keep it from going wrong? Who's going to be available? When are we going to do this? That is being done likely. But if nobody writes it down, you can't prove it.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. You want to check your risk management plan every month. Have we gotten done the things that we had targeted to be done this month? Are the things that are targeted to be done next month on track? And that usually is going to include policies and procedures you're missing. And your policies and procedures themselves, if they're not in place, that usually goes on your risk management plan that you need to make them. So anyway, there you're going to review all those things every month. You want to make sure somebody's looking at your risk management, the overview, not the details. We do an executive summary for a reason. We'll put an entry on there, replace Windows 10 computers, not replace David's computer, replace Donna's computer, it's not that detailed. Mm-hmm. And you just want to know where you stand on the projects. As the business owner, if you're not aware of these things, you're going to get blindsided when things go horribly awry.
That's right.
That's right. So make sure your SRA is up to date. Make sure your risk management plan is being followed. Any policies and procedures that you are missing in your gap analysis that you would have done in your assessment, make sure those are being addressed, and that you are continually doing SRAs for operational changes and environmental changes. And then last but not least, is access and activity auditing. Are people doing what they should do? And right here, back to trust but verify.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it is the just because you can doesn't mean you should. Part of that is snooping, which some things will catch, but there's also, you know, why were you in looking at, you know, this folder? Did you belong there? Or, you know, those kind of things. So paying attention and then making sure your policies and procedures are being followed. So you should be auditing a policy and procedure X amount every month. Review some policies and procedures. So there you have it.
Yeah, that's a good little breakdown.
Yeah, so it's patching and vulnerabilities, MFA and authentication, incident reporting, knowing how many incidents are actually happening and being reported. Those are the top things. Add in there your training and your device management and some of these other things that we've gone through, and now you're staying on top of it.
Yeah. It's almost the 10 threats or the 10 practices from Hiccup.
Yeah, it is. I really should have just made it, go back to that and, match that up. So, but
yeah,
we made a list. Everybody always wants to know, well, what report should I be looking at? What information should I be looking at? Well, here it is. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
Have at it.
Yep. All right. There you go, folks. You can do it yourself. You can have somebody do it, but either way, get it done. All right.
There you go.
That's our show for today. Be sure to join us again next time. Share this out. Help a brother out. We appreciate it. For Don and myself, remember that HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.